Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibiers, welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here. It's Wednesday, January 28th. We finally got Brendan Banfield on the stand. We're going to go through it, but first we got to finish up with the defense private investigator, Harry Lidsky. He picks up going through timelines of locations of Juliana's phone at key points during the case, like on the day the Gmail account was created. He said her phone pinged away from the home, and his opinion was Juliana was not there. He points out Brendan's movements at times when messages were sent to the FetLife account or the Telegram account. They give one example. He was at Washington Dulles Airport. This goes on for way too long. We're not going to dive in, so let's keep going. They show messages sent where someone is pretending to be Christine, sending messages that would be very consistent with somebody on a FetLife account. They show that bathing suit photo that Christine took in the mirror on January 17th, which is on the same day that photo was put on FetLife. And they showed Brendan's phones were not home when the FetLife account was created. On the morning of February 13th, there were outgoing messages from Christine's device to someone on FetLife. We just go over this, and I mean, we know who sent those messages. If Brendan wasn't home, it was Juliana and vice versa. He shows some vacation planning that Brendan and Christine were doing. Someone initiated a password change on FetLife the night before the murders at 11 p.m., and they point out Juliana's device was accessing Netflix at that time. So, wonder who that would be. Allegedly, Brendan. On cross, it took the prosecution about 7 seconds to pretty much rip up way too many hours of direct exam of this PI. She was all over him. She says the Gmail account was created on a Samsung device, and he says yes. The Commonwealth points out that both Brendan and Christine own Samsung devices. Yes. You said Juliana wasn't home the day the account was created, but Brendan was? Yes. Were you able to establish, like our investigator did, that the bathing suit photo of Christine was taken at a Lifetime Fitness? The witness said he didn't see that. Commonwealth says this photo is taken around 7 p.m. The witness says that's when Christine sent it to Brendan. She sends the photo to Brendan, and he responds, nice. So she's at the gym, sends it to him, and just before 10 p.m., someone accesses her Facebook and pulls the photo. Is that correct? Yes. That photo is then sent to the created Gmail account for FetLife, then on to FetLife. The witness says, yeah, but it was cropped. Don't matter, it was still sent, dude. The Commonwealth points out that the laptop is in the house. There are searches for FetLife, and then that created email address joins FetLife and then uses the photo she took at Lifetime Fitness. But she points out on Christine's phone, somebody is using WhatsApp, asking about their child's day. Then by 10:45, there are searches for Lululemon and Frozen tickets. And then a story is read about a child who had their leg amputated. Just a reminder, Christine, she is a pediatric ICU nurse. Very much a story she would want to read. You acknowledge we're talking about two different devices with two different things happening, but yet you can't tell us who was using the devices. All you can tell us is what the devices are doing. He kind of hesitates, and then he says correct. Apart from January 9th, when the Gmail account was created and the Telegram authentication text comes through Christine's cell phone, her phone never uses this again, and he says incorrect. It was used on February 14th, just after midnight. The Commonwealth says with the same model of phone, and he says yes. So the Commonwealth says there's no other usage of FetLife with Telegram using Christine's device other than this February 14th time, and he says correct. On January 23rd at 11:22, the created Gmail is logging into FetLife, and you showed Brendan was at home, but you didn't tell us where Juliana was, and the witness says that's correct. The Commonwealth points out because Juliana left the gym before Brendan. The witness says, well, she arrived with him, but yes. The Commonwealth points to a time when both Brendan and Juliana were at the gym and Christine was on her laptop. And guess what she wasn't doing? Using FetLife or Telegram, and the witness says that might be. We see Juliana get home, and then 2 minutes later, we see someone is logging into FetLife, and the witness says possibly it sounds right. The night before the murder at 9:40, the laptop is looking at Dominican resorts. But between 9:35 and 9:37, someone hops on Telegram and sends a message and then hops right off. And then we don't see Telegram being used until 11 o'clock that night. But at the same time, we see Christine's phone pick up the search for resorts. And then the phone gets busy planning this vacation. The witness says yes. You can't say Christine and Brendan weren't planning a family vacation, and he says he cannot say. When Brendan leaves McDonald's, he doesn't call 911. No. Between 7:25 and 7:30, Juliana and Brendan both, they're just not going anywhere. Juliana's in the cul-de-sac, Brendan's in McDonald's, and the witness says yes, and they are out of the house. Did you notice on January 13th through the 14th, there was no activity on FetLife or Telegram while Brendan and Juliana were out of state together? The witness said he wasn't sure he noticed all of that. And then again, January 31st through February 1st, when they're in Winchester together, there was no activity for FetLife or Telegram. The witness agrees. You can only tell us what the phone and laptop was doing, but you cannot say who was using them. The witness said that was part of his analysis. No further questions. It was brief. It was precise. On redirect, it's a lot of the same, but the gold came when on redirect, the prosecution raises an objection, asked and answered, and the defense says, have I asked that question? And the judge says, yes, that and many more. So then he gets off the stand. I'm sure the jury breathes a big sigh of relief. And then we move on to Mr. Brendan Banfield. He gets on the stand. I will tell you guys, when he is talking about Juliana and how their affair started, he has this creepy little grin on his face. He also smiled bigger about a crumble cookie than he did about anybody spoken about during his time on the stand so far. He says he's 40 and he and Christine have been together since they were 18. They met their freshman year at college, and total dating and marriage, they were together for 19 years. They moved to Virginia after he got a promotion with the IRS. Before their daughter Valerie was born, he and Christine were very active socially with friends, doing card games, playing cards, going on vacations with other couples, hiking. And then he talks about Christine's jobs in New York before they moved. She was a pediatric ICU nurse. She did private health care for a family. She did product training for medical devices, and she was a sexual assault examiner for years. When they moved, she continued being a pediatric ICU nurse. He worked for the IRS in New York as a tax compliance officer, as well as a math tutor, and that was through a business that he owned with Christine, and they both worked at it. They ran that for 3 years, but they sold it before they moved to Virginia. He said their daughter was around 11 months when they made that move. For the most part, he said he and Christine were inseparable. They never broke up at any point, and they were always planning for their future. Their daughter's birth brought all their families close together. When they were living in New York, when both were working, one of the grandmothers would watch their daughter. They move on to his daughter. She's going to be 8 years old in March, and he sees her daily on video chat and by phone. He brags he's taught her math since she was 2. He says he is currently working on times tables with her, which she is doing above her level. He reads to her and does homework, and he teaches her from jail. They spend a lot of time talking about the things he is doing with her. And I think this is really the saddest part for me, is you have a child who most likely still very much loves her dad, misses her mom, but really has no clue what's going on or why he is where he is. And she will find out one day, and the weight that child will carry probably the rest of her adult life that never really goes away. And that really makes me sad. He said Valerie was very attached to her mom, and he said it's tragic, their separation. Valerie would get very excited when Christine would get home from work. She would run up to her. Christine and Valerie did a lot of art projects together, and when she wasn't working, she would do things like take Valerie to dance. The defense asked, "Did you love your wife?" And he says, "Very much." He wanted to continue their marriage. He says he loves his daughter more than anything. And so they bring in a lot of photos of the Banfields in happier times. After a while, the prosecution, rightfully so, begins to object because it's all the same stuff. It's repetitive, and you're trying to make him look like a saint in front of the jury. So the judge does sustain some of that, and we get to cranking on. They took a trip to Pennsylvania in 2018, and they went to the Poconos and stayed in a cabin and did a mud run. They show photos of Christine, Brendan, and their daughter on cruises. There is a photo of him, Christine, and their daughter Valerie at his graduation in Georgia for the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center Academy. He does admit to the affair with Juliana. This is where he gets really grinny. He said it started as a professional relationship in October of 2021 when she came to live with them to be their au pair. Part of her agreement was she would have room and board, and she would have educational opportunities in college. She could work and also provide a loving environment for Valerie. They did have a previous au pair who worked for them for 2.5 years. When they moved, they decided to get another au pair due to their work hours. Sometimes his work could start very, very early, way before the daycares were open, and sometimes their work schedules overlapped. The affair started in August of 2022. He said they were home alone. Christine and Valerie were in New York. Juliana started texting him while he was making food in the kitchen and she was upstairs. And he said it was an unusual line of text messages with her complaining about her dating life and the people she had been seeing at the time. He said he doesn't like texting, so he told her if she wanted to talk, she could come down to the kitchen. So she did. She showed him a few screenshots of her dating app, and she mentioned the people in the app she was matching with all had similar names to him, like Brendan, Brandon, Brennan, and she joked about it. And at some point, he was eating, and she talked about problems with alcoholism within her family in Brazil. He said they talked for a couple of hours, and Juliana tells him that she likes taller men, she likes older men. And Brendan said she was basically describing me. He said they were at the island in the kitchen, and she scooted her seat closer to him a couple of times, and he did not stop her advances. He said he was going upstairs to go to bed, and she said she was tired and was going to do the same. He said when he went into his bedroom, she followed him, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what happened next. A few days later, they talked about continuing the relationship. Juliana was worried that Brendan would tell Christine, and she would get fired and sent back to Brazil. But he told her he had no plans to tell Christine. He also told Juliana he had previous affairs and that this was just an affair and nothing further. He says he didn't think Christine knew about the affair with Juliana, but Christine did know of 2 previous affairs he had, and he said he was also aware Christine had affairs herself. I take this with a grain of salt because Christine is not here to defend herself, and it always is going to make it look better if they both were doing that. In 2013, they talked a few times about this. She was working private health care, and she would travel a week at a time, and they were just separated a lot for work. He gives the example. He spent 6 months in Jacksonville, Florida, a month in Kansas City, and then when they were living in New York, he had to come to Virginia for work. He said they went to couples therapy and decided to stay together. But back to him and Juliana. It depended on Christine's work schedule as far as how much they hooked up. Juliana would spend time with him and Valerie during the day. And he said before the affair started, when he would get home from work, Juliana would go out or go to her bedroom. But after the affair started, Juliana would just go with him wherever he and Valerie went, like soccer practice and things like that. He said there was no plan with Juliana. Speaking of the murders, the affair was 6 to 8 weeks old at this point, and he said it's absurd that a plan was made to get rid of my wife. That's absolutely crazy. Newsflash, Brendan Banfield got a case of the diabetes, y'all. They addressed the gun range. He said Juliana just tagged along since they were going somewhere outside of the house. He said he would go every month or maybe every other month since he had to qualify every year for his job. He said also there wasn't a risk Christine would find out. What's interesting was his words here. And I don't know if you guys caught this if you watched, but he said when they were at the gun range, there was no plan at this point regarding the murders. He didn't say there was never a plan. He said at this point. He said there was none of the FetLife, the Telegram, or the email. He said he did not know about these accounts until after the murders. At the end of January through an early February 2024 timeframe, he said he went to Winchester and Juliana drove herself. His mother-in-law was with Christine and Valerie. He said it was very common that the grandmas came to visit, maybe once every 4 to 6 weeks, and then they would spend 5 to 10 days there with them in Virginia. Valerie was the only grandchild for both sets of grandparents. He talks about his birthday being February 23rd, the day before the murders. On February 24th, the morning of the murders, he had an important meeting about one of his cases since there was going to be an undercover operation. And if it went well, he could get a promotion to senior special agent. So he woke up around 6:30 and Christine was awake and on her cell phone while he was getting ready. She knew he had the meeting and she wished him luck and said she would talk to him before he went to New York with Valerie. So the plan was after his meeting, he was going to drive with Valerie to New York because some friends of his were planning a party for him. Prior to that time, he said he had never taken Christine's laptop or phone. It's password protected, and he has his own devices. Christine kept her laptop in a few places, one being the backpack by the door. Also, she would go upstairs and take it with her, and he mentions that her desk was in their master bedroom. So sometimes she would put it on the nightstand or on the desk at night. But he said she always had her phone on her. He said he didn't see Juliana ever grab Christine's laptop because she had her own. The morning of the murders, Juliana and Valerie were supposed to go to the zoo in D.C. He said Christine had scheduled it and written it on the calendar and also in Juliana's au pair book. Brendan went back upstairs and he said Christine was sitting up in bed with her laptop and her cell phone. He left the house around 7. He said a more usual time for him is around 7:30, but he left early on this day to make sure he had time to get his presentation ready for the meeting, and that meeting was set for 9:30. He said he was going to go get breakfast and then go to the office. So we know he went to McDonald's, and he said it's not uncommon for him to get food before work. The defense brings up that surveillance video. He circled the drive-thru, and we saw that. He said the reason is their app has that QR code where you can get rewards and deals. And when he first opened the app, his code wasn't there. So he circled back around not to block the drive-thru and then got back in line. He went to the parking spot to eat his food. He grins real big and says he ate a crumble cookie he was given for his birthday first by some coworkers. Then he went back into McDonald's to use the restroom. He said as he was finishing up in the bathroom, Juliana called and he got in his car quickly and left. He said Juliana sounded very stressed. Initially, he was not planning to come home, so he called Christine, which makes no sense. If Juliana says a strange man just went in your house, I don't think I'll go home. I'll just call her. Back when the PI was on the stand, the Commonwealth made a point to ask the witness. He didn't call 911 at McDonald's. No. He said that it's not unusual for Christine not to pick up her phone, but it is unusual for it to go to voicemail. She would keep it silent usually, so it would still ring, but then go to voicemail. He tried to call Christine again, went to voicemail, so he called Juliana back. He told her not to go into the house and he would be back there. He said it took him around 10 minutes or so to get there. He said there was no plan with Juliana on the 24th as far as the murders. He knew Juliana was going to the zoo and Christine had taken off work and would be home all day, but other than that, he didn't know anything else. He says he didn't do anything with anyone's devices but his own. That he remembers that morning. Remember, her phone was found in that island in a drawer, turned off. He said he was just getting ready for work. He also denies touching her phone and her laptop at all. And that's where we left off. So it seems like maybe the defense is going to finish up tomorrow. At the end of the day, they will finish up jury instructions. There will be court on Friday from 10 to 4:30. Kind of have a feeling that's going to be closings and maybe deliberations. And can we just celebrate the fact that today they finally let Detective Brendan Miller go? He is not subject to recall. Have yourself a drink, dude, and praise the Lord. So to be honest, the defense, of course, is throwing softball questions and asking him those hard questions right out of the gate, establishing the affair. I'm not surprised he brought up the fact that, according to him, Christine has affairs because, it's almost like a tit for tat kind of thing. If she was doing it, I was okay to do it, but the guy's not credible. I put no stock in anything that came out of his mouth. But that is it for today. Hope you guys have a good rest of your evening, and we will see you soon.